I'm going to give you the answers to some microphone questions that people have been asking me over and over for more than 30 years. Coming up are mic questions that people are often afraid to ask, or worse, don't know they need to ask. Here we go. Question number 1. I feel a little stupid asking this, but how do I hold this mic and where do I talk into it? You'd be surprised at how many people want to ask this, but they don't dare. If you know your microphone is a dynamic mic, chances are it should be addressed from the end, meaning you point the end of the microphone toward your mouth. Most condenser microphones expect you to address them from the side. The user manual or card that comes with your microphone will tell you which it is and how to set it up and address it properly. Question 2. How far should I be from the microphone? Simple. Go like this. There's your distance. My thumb is touching my mouth and my pinky is touching the end of the mic. Now you can get a little closer if you want, but anything closer than about 4 inches will start to sound different, and I'll explain that in just a minute. Anything farther away will start picking up more of the environment and less of you. Let me show you what I mean. If I'm clear back here, you can hear a whole bunch of the reflection off the walls in the room. It's actually called room reflection. You can't hear as much of my voice percentage-wise. Most people, if their voice or their podcast guest's voice, for example, is too soft, turn up the volume. Turning up the volume doesn't solve the problem, because turning it up just increases the amount of any sound coming into the mic, not just the amount of voice that you're getting. If you're hearing too much room, you will just hear too much room louder. The only way to get it right is to control your distance from the microphone. There's one other thing that you can control using distance, and this is often deliberate. Many microphones exhibit what's called a proximity effect, and I'll show you right now. I'm using this Shure SM57, and it's the same distance from my mouth. The closer you get to the mic, the more the sound starts to change and get a little bit darker and a little fuller. If I get way too close, it will just sound muddy. But this darkening of the sound, this change in the sound, is called the proximity effect. Now, it's not necessarily built in. It's just one of the side effects of directional microphones, which we'll talk about in question 3. If you want to see somebody use this technique masterfully well, watch Michael Bublé. When in the more intimate parts of a song, he'll get up tight to the mic like this, and it'll just warm it up. He's very good. Question 3. How do I keep the pops and the wind noises out of my mic? Or how do I get rid of them if they're already there? Those bursts of air are called plosives. There are 3 ways to get rid of plosives before they ever occur. The first is to put a foam windscreen on the end of the microphone, just like this one. That doesn't always solve the problem completely, but it usually helps. Some microphones have an internal pop filter. It's kind of a piece of foam on the inside of, in this case, the ball-shaped head. It usually reduces the plosives enough to work with, though sometimes you may still need to add an external foam windscreen. The second way to control plosives is to use an external pop filter. You can get one like this off Amazon for under $20. It's just a couple of layers of fabric attached to a flexible arm and a clamp that attaches to your microphone stand so you can position it where you want. It lets the sound through because it's really thin fabric, but it doesn't let the wind through as much, so the plosives usually go away. This works best, of course, if you remember to keep your distance from your microphone. Use that trick that I showed you with your fingers, and it'll work. The problem with pop filters is that they can get in the way visually, and you may not want to hide your beautiful face. It's not so much of a problem with me. The third way to reduce plosives is to just be aware of the microphone angle. If you look at this one that I'm talking into right now, you can see that I don't have any kind of pop filter or windscreen on it, but you're not hearing plosives. Part of the reason is that this mic has an internal windscreen, and part of it is because I have the mic positioned at a slight angle from my mouth, maybe a, 30-degree angle. The bursts of air go right past the end of the microphone, but because it's still pointed directly at my mouth, the sound will be nearly identical to what it would be if I was right in front of it. Now, the last part of this question was, And how do I get rid of the plosives if they're in my recording already? The answer is, are you ready for this? You can't. Trying to get them out of there is like baking a cake with too much salt, then trying to get the salt out of the cake after it's come out of the oven. Some software plugins claim to get rid of plosives, but it's a little like putting lipstick on a pig. It's still not pretty. Question 4. Some mics say cardioid or supercardioid. Do I need to know what that means? Yes, absolutely. Is that the same as a dynamic mic? No. Dynamic and condenser are the names for two different types of microphones. Cardioid and supercardioid are names for directions to which a mic is most sensitive. We call this a microphone's polar pattern or pickup pattern. Those are the same. The most popular polar pattern in use today is called a cardioid pattern. If that sounds like it has something to do with the heart, you're right. A diagram of it looks a little bit like an upside-down heart. Microphones with cardioid pickup patterns are designed to pick up your voice or instrument, those are in the front, and a lot less of everything else. You don't want your mic picking up reflections from the walls of the room and making it sound like you're singing in the shower. And you don't want it picking up other sound sources. You want it focused on you. If you're a stage performer, let's say you're a vocalist in a band, you may even choose a mic with a hypercardioid pattern, which is even narrower, so you can keep out the bass guitar and the drums and the lead guitars and the brass section and the kazoo and whatever else you have up there. But you've got to be careful. You turn your head to the side too far to flirt with somebody in the audience, and your volume is going to drop because a hypercardioid mic rejects even more from the sides than a standard cardioid mic will. You've probably actually seen this effect in action. You'll be somewhere and see 2 or 3 vocalists or speakers stand around one microphone and share it, and then they can't figure out why the audience is mostly hearing the middle person and not the 2 on the sides. Well, now you know. They're probably using the mic provided by the reception center or the funeral home or whatever, and it's probably got a cardioid or hypercardioid pickup pattern. Now, remember how pickup patterns work if you decide to angle your mic away a little bit to avoid plosives. If you angle it too far, you may start to lose a little bit of the signal because the mic is less sensitive on the sides. Play around with it until you find a happy place for whatever microphone you're using. If you're looking to buy a mic, and you look at the description, it will always include information about what polar pattern it has. Some mics even allow you to switch between multiple polar patterns. They're just a little more money. A typical cardioid pattern is usually the most versatile. Question 5. What do you do if there's a panel discussion and you need to hear 6 people clearly? Easy. Use 6 microphones. To do it any other way is just begging for trouble, and it creates more problems than it solves. I'll go into more detail about this in another video, but we'll let that suffice for now. Question 6. Somebody told me I have to have phantom power, and another friend said I need something that says plus 48 or 48V. What's the deal with that? Plus 48, 48V, phantom power, all the same thing. So if you're using a dynamic mic, often they don't need any power other than what they're getting by plugging them into the interface or the mixer. Generally, they sound great, but dynamic mics are not as sensitive as condenser mics, so sometimes you have to turn up the gain or the knob that boosts the signal in the mixer. Sometimes you have to turn that up quite a bit. Condenser mics almost all need what's called phantom power. To power a condenser mic properly, it needs 48 volts of power coming back up the cable to the microphone itself. Whatever you're doing, if you're using a dynamic mic, make sure phantom power is off. If you're using a condenser mic that requires phantom power, make sure the phantom power is off until after you've plugged the microphone in. Then turn it on and wait a couple of seconds for it to boost. If you're going to unplug the mic when you're done, make sure you turn the phantom power off for 4 or 5 seconds before you unplug the mic. Otherwise, it can damage the microphone. Question 7. Why does my voice sound so quiet on the recording? Now, this is one of the most common questions I'm asked, and it's one of the most common questions I see on message boards. The answer is that the gain is not set properly. Setting the gain is setting the amount of signal coming in from the microphone. Think of it as gain is how much signal we're getting from the microphone, volume is how much signal we're pushing out to the audience. Too little gain, and your voice will sound too quiet. Too much gain, and it will distort. That distortion is called clipping. Get it just right, and all your wildest dreams will come true. Audio interfaces, mixers, and some USB mics usually have meters or some sort of visual thing that shows whether or not they're getting enough gain. This interface, for example, shows up in green when we're getting enough signal coming from the microphone, meaning if it's only green some of the time, then it's probably not enough signal. Keep it as green as you can with maybe occasional flashes of yellow, but never red. If your interface or mixer has meters that look something like this, I would try to keep the signal averaging around -12 most of the time and peaking at around -6. That's a good safety margin. No matter what type of meter you have, if you hit the red, that means if you're looking at a meter, if it goes to 0, or if you're looking at just a visual indicator on an interface, if it hits red, you're toast. Once that happens, you can't get rid of it. Trying to do so is like baking a cake and burning it, and then trying to unburn it. Was that the second cake? Did I just use 2 cake analogies in one video? Oh well, I'm tired. Watch for a more detailed and comprehensive video on gain staging, and I'll cover what to do in different scenarios, including on stage, multiple microphones, mixer versus interface, etc. Question 8. Why do I hear thumping when I type, or when I touch the mic, or when I bump the arm that it's connected to, or even when I touch the cable? Remember that the job of a microphone is to convert vibration to sound. Now, usually we're talking about when I speak into a microphone or when you sing or play into a microphone, it causes the diaphragm or the capsule in the microphone to vibrate when the air pressure changes, when the sound waves hit it. But microphones aren't very picky about what kind of vibration it is. If you have your mic in a situation where you hit it with your hand all the time, you're going to hear it. That handling noise, those bumps and pops and thumps and things, are called microphonics. I know, it's an amazing word. So you can do something like, if you've got a desk stand, get a piece of 1/2 inch, maybe even 1 inch dense foam. It's kind of like the stuff you'd put in a flight case. Get some dense foam, cut it to fit the base of that stand, and just put the stand on top of it. That usually takes care of it. Another thing you can do for at least some microphones, and there's probably generics for most of them, is put them in a shock mount. That's what this thing is. So nothing metal is touching this microphone. These are just pieces of rubber that keep it suspended. So if I bump the desk or something, it's not going to come up through into the microphone. The third thing you can do is use a floor stand. You can get a boom stand, a microphone stand that sits on the floor, comes up, and there's a boom arm that comes across and places the mic in front of you. Now, unless you're stomping on the floor or it's hollow or something, you're going to be in great shape. The vibration from your desk is certainly not going to go clear down through the floor and up through the microphone. So that's a really good solution. Question 9. Can I use my mic for everything? Is there a mic that I can use for everything? Well, sort of. There is no microphone that's really the best microphone at every single thing. There are a couple of different reasons people ask me this question. One is that they're overwhelmed by choices. We can get just completely buried in information and can't even think clearly if we're trying to figure out what microphone to buy, and all the reviews on YouTube don't necessarily help. They just add to the problem. The other reason people ask me that question is they want to save money. If I can buy one microphone that does most everything, then why would I buy 3 or 5 or 20? I know people with 20. So there are a lot of choices and we're trying to save money. What I would do if I were you is watch my video about the best microphone to start with. It may have a tagline on the end that says you don't want Joe Rogan's microphone, or a visual that says that. It may not be perfect for everything, but it's about as close as you can get. In that video, I talk about the Shure SM57. It's been used, that's this one right here. It's been used as the vocal mic for many of the most famous artists in the world. It's been used as a guitar mic on countless albums, as a snare drum mic for many of the world's greatest drummers, as a recording mic, as a stage mic. It's inexpensive. It's built like a tank. It's easy to find. You can find it on Amazon, Sweetwater.com, Guitar Center, just about anywhere. Question 10. Do I really sound like that? People freak out sometimes when they hear themselves on a recording for the first time. That's because when you and I talk, what we're hearing is not what our listener is hearing. Did you know that the air in your sinuses moves around to change the sound that's coming out of your mouth? The bones in your head vibrate. The bones in your forehead especially vibrate quite a lot and around your nose. The bones of your chest vibrate. Your chest acts like a resonating chamber, sort of like the body of a guitar, and changes how your voice sounds. But you're getting more of that than your listener is. So what you hear and what they hear is very different. A decent microphone hears your real voice, or at least close enough to it. That voice, that sound, is part of what makes you uniquely you. Don't be embarrassed about it. Embrace it. People who like you and your voice. So now, go make some good noise. Follow my advice and experiment with what I've shown you, and you will sound good. And remember, if you've got a decent mic and things sound bad, it's not you. It's usually your technique, but now you know how to fix it. The world needs your true voice, and they need to know what you have to say or express. Take it from a true microphone therapist. That's me. I'm the sound advice guy. We'll talk again soon.